Hi guys, viewers of this channel. Are you all with me for an exciting journey? Yeah, good. Hope you all are doing good and enjoying this series. And guys, the most important question first: are you all ready to become an industry level software developer? Yes, good. So, okay, guys, then let's do it. So, be motivated and look forward to something really nice inside this video. And I'm excited to take you through this video lecture, and let's do it now. So today's video lecture is about object initialization and basically the init methods, right? And we'll be using Xcode version 11.4.1 for the practicals and Apple developer docs for referencing, right? Okay, so moving forward, let's move into this. So in this session, you will be learning what is object initialization and basically what is init method. So, and why do you do object initialization, and meaning why do you need init methods, and how you do object initialization, right? How do you do and practical code examples, right? That is the most important thing because it's a hands-on lectures. So let's move into this. Let's dig deep into this. So object initialization. For that, what I basically do is I'm going to the Apple developer docs, right? So let's see what is a init method, right? So or object initialization. So let me just make this little big large for you. Zoom in little bit just to make it clear for you. View command plus. I hope this looks fine. Let me put a command plus here. Yeah, this should good look. So object initialization, looking at Apple developer documents. This is the documents for developers for references, for referencing. So initialization sets instance variables of an object to reasonable and useful initial values. So you are aware that we got instance variables, and if you don't know what are instance variables, look at one of the other videos in this video series where we talk about instance variables and of course about properties as well, right? So initialization sets the instance variables of an object to useful initial value. So it's about, so when you create an object and if your object, say if your class got some instance variables, so that you can set the initial values. So initialization is giving initial values just when you create the object at the same time, right? Okay, so that's what is an initialization object, right? And why you need it is, as it says, to initialize, to give some initial values, right? And let me see, and then if you look at Apple developer documents further, in this search, Google search, you will see. So init, well, you got it as a instant method, and it's declared in ns object, right? So if you look at this Apple developer document for Swift, it's for Objective-C. So if you want to learn about Swift, look at our other video series on Swift, A to Z. In ns object class, there's a init method. So this ns object is like, say, the topmost parent class, and if you create a class, if you inherit from ns object, you will get this method inherited. It's an instance method, and this init method will be implemented by subclasses to initialize new object. So if you got a subclass, let us say you own user defined class, you can use the init method. You can overwrite, and you can initialize the subclass objects. Let's see when we do the practicals. But if you don't overwrite, you will automatically inherit the default init method, right, from this ns object class. And this is the syntax for init method, which you use to declare. And so it will give a return type of instance type, right? So the return value is this instance type, meaning the return value is the initialized object, only if an object could not be created for some reason, right? That would not result in exception. So if there's exception, it will throw exception. So, and if you want to know about exceptions, look at our other video about exceptions. So for some reason, if it's unable to create, it will return nil. Otherwise, it returns initialize object. So if you look at the discussion, so this is when first say if you have a class, it can be some of any of your class. So init message is coupled with alloc. So it's so if you need to know about alloc, look at our other video about classes and objects, right? So we got another video about classes and objects. Look at that to find what is this alloc and all. So anyhow, we allocate some memory, then immediately you call the init method. That's how you create object in Objective-C, right? An object isn't ready to be used until it has been initialized. So the object will not be ready for use unless you until you call the init. So it's important you to call the init. And this is basically if you are overriding the init method, or if you are giving implementation for a init method, this is the skeleton code, standard code for it. So you will say return type is instance type. So minus means instance method call init, and this will return the instance type, which is initialize object. And then basically the theory is, if you look here, it should say if the may return nil, for example, right? So I'm going to read something from here. In some cases, custom init method might return, right? You must always use the object return by init. So basically what it says is overall, inside this init method, what you have to do is you have to call the superclass init method, right? So you have to do it. You have to call the superclass init method, so that in order to make sure that you invoke a chain of init methods, right? So let's read the other document. So the NS object declares init, right? Prototype. So that's what you saw here. The NS object declares the init, right? It talks about that, right? And the Cocoa library has plenty of ways of initializing with parameters. So let's go down, implementing an initializer, right? So I'm looking and selecting some important ones. So it says always invoke the superclass init first, initialize. That's what this does even here. So you should always invoke the superclass init method, meaning the parent class init. Why do you have to do it? Right, that is to make sure that the chain of parent class init methods are being invoked. So when you from your init method, when you invoke the superclass init method, it will make sure that invoke the parent class init methods, right? So because all the init methods are invoking the parent class init methods, and that makes sure that all the initialization happens in the inheritance hierarchy. So if you want to know about inheritance, look at our other video about inheritance, right? So the focus in this lecture is about init methods, right? So the requirement to invoke the superclass initialization as the first action is very important, right? So it's very important so that it invokes all the parent class init methods in a chain, and then everything gets initialized, right? So it's very important for you to keep that in mind. Now, having got this basic idea, let's go and do a practical exercise. So for that, I'm going to start Xcode, right? I'm going to say Xcode, and I'm going to create a new Xcode project, right? So I'm going to say File, New Project. Give me a sec. I will make a new project for you. File, new project. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to invoke say Xcode, right? So let me invoke Xcode, and in Xcode, give me a sec, I'm going to check something. So I'm going to make a new project. Let us say in Xcode I will say File, New Project, right? New project, and then for this I'm not going to use a mobile iOS mobile app. I'm going to use a Mac OS command line tool, just to focus on init methods, so that you can easily use it in iOS app once you get the concept, right? So you'll see how we develop iOS apps in our other videos in this video series. So I will go for Mac OS command line tool. I'll click next, and I will say example for what for the topic, right? So we are talking about object initialization or init method. So I will say init example for init methods, right? So this is my example, say example, yeah, example for init methods. So I will call it as example 1, yeah, for init methods. Okay, cool. And language is Objective C. Click next, right? And then let me say I want to save it over here. Example for init methods. Let me say create. And also I would like to do one thing, because I will be doing a couple of exercises for init. I will make a subfolder inside this called init methods, right? Example for init methods. Example for init method. So I'm just going to create. So inside that, let me say I will create inside that my example 1 for init methods, right? So which is this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the main .m file, and I'm going to start declaring a class. So let me do it this way, just for me to introduce things. So I will declare a class. So to declare a class, you will declare an interface. So you'll type at interface and then double click on this, and then you give the class name. So let me call it as calculator to start with, calculator, and the super class. So my parent class will be ns object, and then inside this I'm going to declare the data, meaning the property. So I'll say at property, let's say integer, a number 1, right? And then property, another property integer number 2 of the calculator, and then the answer, right? If I'm adding the number 1 and number 2, so I need an answer, right? So I got the 3 properties well placed, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for the implementation of this class, right? So I will say at implementation. So the class is going to be calculator, which I'm going to implement, right? And the methods should come here. Now what I'm going to do is, just to make it clear, I'm going to put a line over here, so you can see that it's the end of, like, it's easy to see that it's the end of the calculator interface declaration. And I will do the same thing here. I will put this over here, so it looks a little bit clear. So it's the end of like this. So this is the end of the implementation. So you see it's like interface, and then this is the implementation, right? And the method. So first thing I'm going to do is, this is where I'm going to make the init methods, right? So now to declare init method, so as a if you want to become a developer, you have to get used to referencing the developer docs. So this is what I said earlier. So we were reading. So I'm going to copy this. That's how you do things, because the developer doc says this is how you have to create an init method, right? So I'm going to copy it and then going to get into my project. Very important for you to keep that in mind, right? So over here, and one more thing, so the signature, so this is the complete declaration, and if I want, I can put the signature, only the first line, and then I'm going to put it in the interface as a signature of the init method, and then the implementation of the init method is going to go down, right? So this is if you are declaring your own init method, right? So I'm going to put my own init method. Well, so that if I want, let us say, the calculator to get initialized with the value. So let me put it this way. For me to make it more clear to you, I will remove this init method. I will remove this init and show you something first, right? Now I got implementation, but I have nothing inside that yet. But I just got an interface with 3 properties and the implementation. So but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create an object and show it to you, right? So I'm going to say starting, right? I'm going to make object, so of this class calculator. So let's say the class calculator object says C1, and now we have discussed about creating objects in one of our previous videos, right? So have a look at it if you are not clear of this. So calculator is the class. So I'm going to create allocate memory for this object, and then immediately I'm going to call the init method. So this is how you call the init method. Now I don't have a init method declared because there's a automatically inherited init method, right? So you got a init method inherited by default from your parent class ns object, right? So then let me say I just want to output the data, right? So ns log, I'm just going to output, let me say I'm going to output the answer, right? So I say answer equals to, and I just want to output the answer, right? So I can access the data, the property answer. So I can say the object is c1, right? All good, guys? The object is c1. I'll say c1 dot answer, right? I'm just going to show you, and I'm going to run this now. So I got an object, and I'm outputting, and these are basic concepts which we have discussed in our previous lectures, in the other videos, lectures. Have a look at it. I have to put an @ symbol here. I have explained the reason in one of my previous videos, in a couple of videos. Have a look at it. So so it says data argument not using format. So again, we have discussed this. So this is an integer. So I will have to give a format specifier, right? Have a look at our previous videos for that. So let me run this now. It build succeeded, guys. It's successfully built, and hold on. So and see the output, right? So the output. What's the output, right? It's 0. Answer is 0, right? It's 0. So why is it 0? Because I did nothing, right? I just created the object, right? And just output, and it has got default values, integers. So that's why it's 0. So I have nothing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the add method first to show you something. So how do you declare add methods? So once again, if you don't know, look at one of our previous videos about declaring methods. So you have to put a hyphen and put the return type of the method. Let me say it's void for now, and the method name, say add, right? So this is how you declare the signature of the method, and then you copy it and you go to the implementation, and you will give the implementation of the add method. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to say add the data, right? So you could say something like this: answer equal to number 1 plus number 2, right? Because let us say your properties are these are your properties, right? So answer number 1, number 2, right? So there's a way of accessing these, right? Properties. You can't just say answer. Either you have to use the implicitly generated instance variables. Once again, if you want to know about implicitly generated instance variable, look at our video lecture on instance variables, right, and properties. So basically what you have to do is, as we have discussed on our earlier lectures, you have to say underscore to refer to the implicitly generated instance variables, right? This is one way of doing it. If not, the other way is, I will comment this and show you. The other way is you will say self dot answer. So that's another way of accessing the properties. So when you say self, it's accessing the property. Self dot say number 1 and say self dot number 2. Earlier, if you say underscore, it's referring to the implicitly auto-generated, auto-synthesized instance variables. And if not, now I'm so if you are confused about that auto-synthesized instance variables and this self and stuff, look at our video about instance variables and properties in this video series. So I will go with this second option. So I got 2 numbers getting added, right? So I got add method. And let me put another method to display the data. Oh, no, let me keep it that way, just straight away output, right? So not a problem. So I got the add method. So I'm going to call the add method now. So I'm going to call the method. So once again, look at our video about calling methods if you're not sure how to call a method. So C1 add, right? So this is how you call method message passing. So I have an object C1 and I have initialized it. I don't have an init method. It will use the default init method, and I have called add. Once you add, you will add number 1, number 2, get the answer and display the answer. So let's run this once again. And once again, you will see the answer is 0, because though I call the add method and add method is adding the numbers, still for the object C1, I have not given any data, right? So it's using the default data for these properties, which are integers, are zeros, right? So now the next thing is for me to give the data, right? So I got a couple of ways of giving data. So one option is I can say C1 dot and say number 1, right? So this way you can give data c1 dot number 1 or c1 dot number 2. So we have done this earlier, right? When we do classes and objects, look at that video. This you know already, right? So now if I give the data, so the data is assigned for number 1 and number 2, and when you call the add method, it adds number 1 and number 2 and gets the answer, and here you output the answer, the property answer. So if you run, this should say 15, right? Why this is okay, because it says 5 because let me see, okay, because I have given number 2, right? So number 2, so I say number 1 and number 2, right? So when you run this should say the answer is 15. Awesome, it's 15. But this you already know. I don't want to do this now, right? We are going to focus on init methods. So what are init methods? So init methods means when you create the object itself, you are going to give data. So for example, if I don't assign any data, once again I'm showing you it is 0, right? So now you can, if you want to use init methods, basically what you can do is, as per the reference, you have to declare the init method. So what you do is, you will make a signature of the init method on the implementation, right? So on the implementation, you will put this, and then on the on the interface, I did a mistake. Give me a sec. You have to put it here. Let me put it at the top so that you know, because it's an important method for us. Cool. Sorry guys. So then I have the interface signature for that, and then the implementation of the init method. So this is this, you just copy it from the developer reference because this is the standard skeleton code for it. So basically you have to call this, as you saw, the init method should always make sure that it calls the superclass init method, and it will have to assign it to self means the current instance, right? So this is where the current instance gets initialized, right? See this line, right? Self means the current instance. So if you are unsure what is this current instance, look at our video on classes and objects, about Objective-C and stuff like that. So once you make it, then you can do the initialization, right? Now you can say, okay, self, right? Self dot, say number 1, you can give some initial value, say 100, for example, right? If self dot number 2, the property number 2, let us say, give something like, let us say 500, right? I'm giving example. So this is what I call as what we call initialization. So initialize number 1 and number 2 into 100 and 500. So now what happens is, when someone create object and call init method, it invokes this init method. That's the beauty of it, right? Okay guys, that's the beauty. So when you call init, it invokes this init method, and what happens is it gives some initial data. So even though you don't assign any data here, meaning outside class or method creating object, if they don't assign data, it will use the initialized data automatically, you know, where you have set over here. So if you run this now, the answer is 600. Awesome. Why is it 600? Because though you didn't give data, your init method will initialize with whatever the initialized data given here. So for example, if you give some other numbers, say 30 and how much, say 20, yeah, anything. So it's in the init, so it's 50 because you create a object, initialize it, so that gets initialized. So that's the default, that's the init. Sorry, so this is the init method without any arguments. But then moving forward, you can have init methods with arguments, right? So what does that mean, right? So if I want, now I can take one step forward and do something like this, right? So I can have different init methods. So if I copy this and now use your knowledge about methods and methods with parameters. So if you look at our other video, if you need to about methods, if you need more information about this, so you could say something like this. Okay, so let's say now you want to initialize this with some data values, right? So rather than just calling the default init method, say you want to initialize with number 1, right? So then you will call this method as, say, init. This is like the standard naming convention. You will say something like init with. Now this is a naming convention standard. Init with what? So you say number 1. So you will say init with number 1, right? This is a naming convention. So this is a init method with a parameter. So now you have to say what is the parameter. So you have to declare the parameter. So this is how you declare parameters. Look at our other video if you are not sure of declare parameters. So you declare a parameter number one. So this init with number one meaning you are initializing by passing a parameter and called say number one. And then what you do is you will go and do the implementation. So this step is straightforward like a method. You just but you have to make sure. Give a sec. Let's put this down. But make sure one thing, right? Definitely refer to the developer docs. Always refer to the developer docs. You have to do this. You have to do this, right? So always within the init method, you have to call the superclass init method. So I'm just copying that part and putting it here, right? And then let's say you are getting a parameter, right? So then say you want to initialize only that. So then what you will say is self dot number one, right? That means self dot number one is your property, and you want that property value to assign with the incoming parameter number one. So that's what I did here with the incoming parameter number one. So that's it. Wonderful, right? So I got init with number one with one parameter. Now let's create object. So I'm going to copy this, guys, because to save time, and I'm going to call this as C2 and this as C2, right? And one more thing, I'm going to keep it here and this one here. So this answer I'm going to say C2.answer, so C2 object. And this time it's not just init. I'm going to call init with number one. So when you start typing here, it will figure out that you have two init methods. See, init or init with number. So just double click and select this, and just see it's asking for the parameter. Let's say number 10, right? And then you call the add method and run. So let's see what's the output, right? For the second, see it's 10. Why is it 10? So you init with number one, it's 10. So then init with number one, just get it, put it to number one, but number two is not given with the values, it's a 0. So it's 10. And when you call the add method here, basically what happens is the add method adds number one. The add method adds number one and number two. So the number one you have been initialized with this parameter value 10. So that's why the result is 10. So now I think you got the concept now of init methods, right? So now I can move one more step forward and say init with number one. This is just parameter passing, guys. This is just parameter passing. So look at the methods tutorial if you can't understand this, right? The other one. So and you can say and say okay number two, right? That's how you pass parameters, right? And then you will say okay, your second parameter is an integer, and let's say number two. Cool. Great. So then you go and declare this down, right, in the implementation. So I'm doing it fast now because you have seen how I did this, and I'm doing it fast. You have to make sure that you copy, you call the superclass init method. So easiest thing is copy this and just say self dot number two. Awesome, guys, awesome. So number two, right? Done, right? So the second parameter, right? So it's init with number one and number two, right? So then let me demonstrate it with the third object, right? So this time let us say object C3, right? So init with number one. Now you can call and, because see it figures out that you have the third method like init method called init with number one and number two. See, it helps you to figure it out. Just put the second parameter and just call that method and just output it, right? So we should expect to see 10 and 5 15 as the third output, right? Awesome, guys, awesome. See 15, right? Good. So we successfully completed our first example about init methods, right? I'm going to do another example to help you to understand this very quickly, right? So thumbs up, right? All good. Now you got the idea of init method, and let me keep it that over there, and let me go and quickly say file, new project, right? Say again another command, macOS command line tool, next. So this time example again for init methods, right? Init methods, right? That's what we gave. Cool, init methods. But this time init methods, this is like my second example. Am I right? So I would say example 2. Early one was example 1. Objective-C language. Click next. Okay, guys, inside this folder, init methods. Great. Click go. So I want to cut down my time short. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy stuff from my previous class just to show you, because I can save time which I'm using to type, right? So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to bring it over here, right? And I'm going to put it over here and just change the name of the classes. See, this time, let's say I want a student class, right? Student class, right? And so then my implementation should be the student class, and my properties are going to be, let us say, student number, then let us say ns string, pointer, let us say student name, and integer marks. So I'm going to declare a student class, right? Marks. Okay, guys, and then my init method. So init, and then I can say init with, now you should be with me, right? Init with what? Student number, right? And so this you can call as std number, right? Are you all with me, guys? Yes, good, good, good. So init with student number, and simple. So then the second one is, okay, init with student number, let's say student number, and, right, be fast, and what? Help me, be fast. Exactly. And what's this? Student name. Cool, right? std name, and the parameter is a ns string. Let's be fast, and so just call it as std name, something meaningful. Wonderful, good. So let's copy this, and let's just say finally init with student number and student name. Go ahead, guys, go ahead. Just think, what? Cool. Just copy this. Okay, just put it here, right? So this should be init with student number and student name, and what? std marks. Let me call this as std marks, just to make it a bit consistent, you know. So I will call it as std marks, right? Awesome, guys. So what will be the parameter of marks? It's an integer, guys. So int, let's call this as student marks. This should be simple, guys, should be simple for you, right? No stress, just understand things, right? Cool. So I got four init methods: the default, meaning without any parameters, and one with one parameter, and the second init method with two parameters, and another init with three parameters: 1, 2, 3. So now it's a matter of implementing them, right? So I don't want this add method. This is from the previous example. Init, say, maybe I don't want anything to happen, right? So I can just keep it like this if I want, right? Or I can take it out even without even putting it here, because if I'm not giving anything, but I will just leave it like that. And then init with student number, right? So I've just put it here. So easiest thing is just copy this, you know, because you know that's the signature line, right? Okay, guys, just put it here, right? And just say self dot student number, right? Because this is init with student number. Yeah, okay, guys, and then you just put it here, right? Cool, done, right? Just copy this. Let me delete this, delete, and just put it, and be fast, so just copy the signature from this. Be fast, guys, copy the signature, just put it here, and what? Yes, you are right. std name, right? So std name. Okay, guys, clear, fun, having fun, enjoying. That's what you have to do, guys. You have to enjoy programming, right? Then just copy this, paste it. So because in programming, once you do one thing, once you understand and do it, just copy paste. So because you want to save your time and finish your program as soon as possible. So after you understand things, just copy paste is the fastest and easiest and the best thing to do, you know, like I'm doing exactly now, right? Okay, guys, cool, my friends, we got the init methods implemented. What's next? That's right, you are right, we have to go and create the objects. Am I right? Let's do it now, right? I'm just going to say starting and creating the objects. Once again, I want to make it fast, right? So I'm going to go to my previous program where we created objects, and you know, so I'm just going to get one just to make my life easy, right? And I'm going to put it here, but this time, you know, it's not calculator, it's student class, right? So okay, student class, let us say s1. Okay, you alloc and init. Now you know this is the init without any parameters, right? So there's no add method. I didn't do. I just want to output the data. So I just want to say student number, right? So this will be like s1 dot student number, yeah, and then you have to keep on adding their list. So comma, then say student name, right, and then that is what you are going to print here, like say s1 dot student name, yeah, but then here you have to say the format specifier, which is percentage at yeah, cool, comma, and then let's say you want to say student marks, right? Okay guys, marks, so that's what you display over here, my friends, student marks, and then that's an integer, yeah my friend, so you put it over here like this. That's it. So this should work, right? So let's run, let's run. Come on, come on, compile it fast. Okay, it's exactly like I expected, right? Number is 0, name is null, null is mean empty, and marks is 0. So it's object, string is a object, so you got a null value. This number and marks are like a primitive, so they get 0 default value. So see, because I did not pass any data. Now let's see the magic, right? Let's see the magic. I got my student number is 2, right? Okay, so s2, and then this should be s2, s2, yeah, s2. Okay, and then I got, let's say I'm creating a few objects, like so s3, or let's do one by one, baby steps, s2. This time I want to say init. I would like to say init with student number, right? So because see, the ID has sense what I have written, and it gives me this. So I just have to select it, select it from the mouse and say student number 1, right? So you are initializing. Just run and see what's the output, right? Wonderful, it's number 1. This is empty because I didn't give data. I think you got the trick, guys. You got it well placed in your mind now, right? It's crystal clear. I believe it's crystal clear for you now. So I'm initializing s3, right, and I'm outputting s3. So I need to initialize it. So initializing is done with init method. So this time it's not init with student number, right? I'm going to say init with help me. You are right. You are right. Which one? This one. Init with student number and student name, right? Just so the student number, let's say number 2, and let's say the name, right? So you have to give the name. Let's say John, yeah. Okay, John, S3, and out. So I gave only the number and the name for S3. So S3, the third one should output the number 2, John, and the marks is 0 because I didn't give in data. Last thing, guys, the last thing, right? You should be happy because we're ending the session very soon. So you create the object S4, guys. Then you output S4, S4. Come on, come on, come on. Be fast, S4, S4. Cool, and come on, I don't want this. Which init method do I want? Yeah, I know you are with me, which one? Init with student number and student name and student marks. Awesome, guys, awesome. You are right, and the name I will give, let's say, what do I want? The name, yeah, let me say Mark. No, it's Mark is Mark. So John, and got a friend called Anne, and the and a student called Anne, right? I got a student called Anne, and then the marks. Let's say Anne is a good student. She got 80 marks, right? S4, right? What's wrong here? What went wrong? Okay, this is unnecessary. Okay, guys, I think things should be fine. So you run it. Cool. See the student number 3, Anne, and the marks 80. So with that, we successfully did the second practical using init methods, and you will see that you saw it in action, right? You saw it in action. So I think that's the end of the lesson. So this is how you initialize objects, right? So let's look at the conclusion slide. Where's the conclusion slide, guys? We need to finish this. In this session, you learn, and the conclusion. So isn't it awesome? So that you learn something really nice, right? So we learn about the usage of init methods, that is to initialize, and we need some practical. So what's the usage? Once again, to conclude, it is to initialize, right? It is to initialize. So we did it twice. We did one for the calculator. As I see, I got the calculator and I initialize. So initializing meaning you are giving data just as when you create the object, right? So this is initialization, right? Whereas if I do it the other way, where is it? Where is it? Did I do it? Did I do it over here? I deleted it, but let me show it to you now. If I had say object 0, just a quick thing, I did it and delete it. So if I say C0, calculator 0, something very important, C0 add, right, and C0 answer. So if I want, I can say object C0 dot number 1, right? So I showed this to you earlier, right? But I want to show you something interesting. Say C0, right? Dot, let us say number 2, let us say 40, right? And if I run this, let me run this once again. So the C0 output should be 340 is 340. Can you see, guys, right? 340. But now what happened here is, it's very important for me to explain this. So this is, you create the object and it call the basic empty initialization method, right, over here. So I'm going to do one thing now. I'm going to because you saw how I did this earlier, right? So I'm going to remove this from here. So you got another choice now. So this is like the basic init method, which does nothing, right? Which does nothing. So in that case, when you call the init, it does nothing, right? So it's so what happens is, it's the values are zeros, but you are assigning data to the properties. But remember, when you assign data, that's not initializing, right? That's not initializing. Here the init method does not initialize or does not do anything, because I see it's kind of empty. It just called the parent class. So just to let you know, you can have empty init methods, and then you have to assign data like this, right? If not, you can call the init method. So we got it over here, right? So I'm going to remove this because we got it just here, right? So in the C1, so see, if I got C1 calling the default init method, as I did little while ago, C1 dot number 1, say 300, and C1 dot number 2, guys, number 2, let us say 40, the same thing I did earlier. So if you run this, once again the same thing, guys, 340, right? So you got 340 because you call the init, which does nothing, as I said, and so it's empty initialization method, right? Okay, cool, we are done, right? And one more thing, if you got an empty initialization method, you really don't even need to put it here, right? So to conclude, I would say, if it does nothing, what I can do is let me remove, let's remove and see this, right? Let's remove and see, because if you did some other languages like Java, so this is similar to the concept of Java constructors, right? So in a Java constructor, if you remember, if you have your own user-defined constructors, it does not produce the default constructor, right? So for example, now you have your own init methods, and if it's Java, these are like your own constructor. So in Java, if you have your own constructors, it does not automatically create the default constructor. So if in Java, if you delete this, and if you try to call like a default constructor like this, something like this, in Java you will get an error, right? Let's see what Objective-C does, right? Let's see what Objective-C does. So I'm going, because I'm going to experiment something. So I have a init method which does nothing, right? So I might have deleted this. So let me delete this, right? So if I delete it, so I got the other init methods, I deleted it. Let's see what's going to happen, right? So let's delete this, and let's save it, and let's compile it, right? Let's clean, let's clean, and let's rebuild again. Let's rebuild, build, right? Let's see what's happening. It says build succeeded, right? It says build succeeded. Now I want to do one more thing. I just want to make sure that I want to see exactly what's happening. So I put a different number pair. So if it works, it should give a 500. So it's compiling. That's a good sign. So let's run this. Build succeeded, and it's 500. So what do you reckon? What do you get from these guys, right? So it's not like Java, where in Java, when you have your own constructors, and like this, if you are on constructors, and then in that case, in Java, if you try to create object with the default constructor, it gives error. But it's not that in Objective-C. So in Objective-C, if you don't want to do anything in your init method with without any parameters. You can just, you know, do it without declaring it. So, okay guys, so hope you enjoyed this this video lecture, and you got a thorough knowledge about, you know, the object initialization init methods. And it's, we have reached the end of the class. Let me see whether we have covered everything. So give me a sec, guys, just hold on. So we covered it, init stuff like that. Okay, cool, good. Okay, so guys, we have reached the end of this video. And if you were unclear of any of the areas, you know, which were not covered in this video, feel free to have a look at the other videos. So please make sure to have a look at the other videos in this series if something was unclear, right? And until that, right, you will also, what we'll do is I will upload a link below this YouTube. So below this clip, I will upload the link for these practicals. So feel free to, you know, download the practicals done by me and have a look at it and do it by yourself as well, right? So until that, I think all looks good. And so we covered the init, which initializes data. And then what we do next in this video series is we will be using this concept of init when we start developing the mobile apps. So have a look at our other videos in this series about developing mobile apps, and then you will see that this init method is used a lot, right? Okay guys, awesome. It was awesome session with all of you, and I enjoyed, you know, delivering this to you. And look at other videos and become a developer in a very short period of time. That's our objective, right? So until that, we'll meet you with another session, right? Oh, so, yeah, cool.